When I went to Strasburg, Pennsylvania last month, I saw some very interesting things. One thing that I found particularly interesting is the locomotive I used to represent Rodney, the shop switcher on the Southern United Railroad, is actually on display at the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum. It was very neat seeing an engine that I had turned into a character from my stories. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's story, which is about our friend Rodney. A large storm was forecasted to happen, and it was due to bring heavy rains, flooding, and high winds. It was going to be so bad that Mr. Egan decided it would be best to close the railroad and have all the engines go back to their sheds. Rodney, the shop switcher, was bringing a short freight train to South Plainsville. He was told to stay there until the storm cleared, which could be the next morning. He dropped his cars in the yard and joined the other engines in the shed. Sarah was worried. "I hope the shed is stable. I don't want it to fall and then we get blown away," she said nervously. "Don't be daft," chuckled Larry. "We're too heavy to be blown away, even if the shed does collapse." "We might be okay," said Christian. "But some of us," he said, looking at Rodney. Rodney noticed. "What is that supposed to mean?" he snapped. "Well," replied Andrew, laughing, "you're a lot smaller than the rest of us. If that shed does come down and the wind blows up hard enough, we'll stay on the rails. You'll get blown from here to Otisville." "Are you trying to say that I'm too small to go in a storm like this?" "Well," smirked Christian, "if the dome fits." Rodney was furious. "I'll show you," he grumbled and began to make his way out of the shed. "Rodney, stop!" shouted Taylor. But it was too late. Rodney had made up his mind and was puffing away. The rain began to come down heavier as Rodney made his way along the main line. "I'll show Christen and Andrew," he said, determined. "I'm big enough to brave this weather." The rain pelted down and the wind tore at him, but Rodney refused to give up. He passed over a bridge, which he thought ran over a river. But it wasn't a river. It was a branch line that had just been flooded out. Rodney didn't venture out of the works much and didn't know the line. So when he took the switch, he didn't know he was heading straight for the water. It was raining so hard that Rodney could barely see in front of him. As Rodney rounded the curve, he saw the flooded out track ahead of him. He put on his brakes, but it was too late. The water ran up to his firebox and quickly put out his fire. His driver and fireman were crossed. "Now look what you got us into," said the driver. Rodney didn't feel so tough anymore. His crew managed to climb up the embankment and took shelter in one of the section houses along the main line, leaving Rodney to sit in the flood and think about what had happened. The next morning after the storm had passed, Amber and Rodger were sent out to inspect the rails for any damage. They found Rodney under the bridge. "What are you doing down there, Rodney?" asked Rodger. Rodney stayed silent. "Don't worry," said Amber. "We're going to report this and make sure you get rescued." Unfortunately, Rodney's rescue was very low on the priority list. Trees and landslides had to be cleared, and passenger cars trapped in flood areas had to be pulled out and taken to Harmon Works to be inspected. It wasn't until very late in the afternoon that Larry was sent to pull Rodney out of the floodwater. Christen and Andrew were waiting for them at the junction. They felt ashamed. "This never would have happened if we didn't tease you," said Christen. "We're very sorry," added Andrew. "It's not really your fault," said Rodney. I shouldn't have went out in the storm knowing it was dangerous. Come on, Rodney, said Larry. I have to take you to get your firebox dried out. All right, said Rodney. Larry whistled goodbye to Christen and Andrew and made his way to the works. But Rodney had learned a lesson. Doing something dangerous doesn't make you brave. It makes you very silly.
D&D, so we call it Dumb and Dumber. It's John Sabak. It's the NS crew. Yeah, so they stop. Watco takes care of all Phillips 66's other plants. All of them. And we were the only one that Watco didn't do. And